Welcome back to Market. In business and in life, risk is simply part of the package. But can we prepare for it? Can we manage it? Join me now as I chat with Ken Hackshaw, Managing Director and Lead Consultant at KHBC Limited, a risk management company. What is risk?
Risk is defined as the effect of uncertainty on achieving objectives. It's a standard definition because if you Google risk, you'll probably find 100 plus different definitions. So the international standards of organizations came together, a bunch of fellow risk practitioners, and they came up with this general definition of risk, which is the effect of uncertainty on achieving objectives. Simple, but very effective.
Therefore, risk management is?
Risk management is the identification, the analysis, and the management of the risks. So you go in, you find out what your risks are, you put in a framework to manage those risks. Very holistic, and if done properly, very, very, very productive.
What kinds of organizations need risk management?
Every single organization should have, I would dare say must have, some level of risk management. Most organizations do it if it's not formalized. Yeah, so many organizations would already have some level of risk management. Let's just change it around. They have some level of managing risks. Yes, for if they did not, many of them probably would not have been in business, or they may not have been profitable. But it needs to be formalized. So every single institution, irrespective of the industry, health, business, defense services, they ought to have, in my humble opinion, or expert opinion, a risk management framework. It would so the size of the organization may depend, or what may be factored into that is the resources that you throw after the development of that risk management framework. For smaller organizations, you may not need 5 folks, you may need 2, the larger organization. So it may be there may be some resource constraints depending on the size of the organization. But to answer your question, every organization ought to have a risk management framework or be practicing proper risk management.
So risk management is not just for the insurance industry?
Not for the insurance, just for the insurance, nor is it just for the financial industry, which is a major misconception. Most folks, you ask them about risk management. I remember asking a guy with a PhD, and he said the only thing he knows about risk management is managing his checkbook. So there's this misconception. So no, it's not just finance and not just insurance. It's across the board in every single industry. Some of my clients, I call them mom and pop shops, they have an element of risk management in there to help them manage their day-to-day processes. So it ought to be there, it should be there.
How does risk management work? What are the elements of risk management that need to be considered if you're going to implement a risk management plan?
Great question. I would start with the culture. And I don't mean the steel bands and those things. I mean the risk culture of an organization. So it's like laying the foundation for rolling out a risk management program. Yeah. So within this risk culture is the training on risk management. So when I say risk culture, I mean, so this is how it's defined. It's like groupthink. It's the organization, how they think, how the intelligence they bring to treating with risk. So basically, it means we're all on the same page. Yeah. So it starts with training. It starts with ensuring you have the right risk culture within the organization. So if you don't have a good foundation and you put a house on top of that, it collapses, and then it becomes just like processes, and you don't want that. So to ensure that you have a proper risk management framework in place, start with the culture, build that up, do training, because we all need to know what is risk management. It makes very little sense saying this is how we're going to go do a risk assessment if one does not know what risks are or what a risk is. So it starts with ensuring that you have the right risk culture, and I dare say that's what's lacking in many of the institutions here, many institutions in many of the industries here in these parts of Trinidad and Tobago. The culture needs to be a bit more robust, the risk culture that is. So it starts with that, laying that foundation, the culture, making sure your folks are well trained, and then you could start rolling out the methodology which is what I call the robotics of risk management, because it's the hands-on part of it. Yeah, but if you don't have the wherewithal in terms of why am I doing this, and you and I being on the same page as employees, then it's like building a castle on the seashore. It's going to wash away.
You mentioned that Trinidad and Tobago seems to be lacking.
Yeah, in my humble opinion, yeah.
Right. Is there any company that you think is where it needs to be in terms of risk management locally?
Well, there are many companies. I did an article recently on energy, and I say many of the energy companies have a risk management program in place. Many of the financial services companies have a risk management program in place. The fact that they're sending their employees for training speaks to that they want it to be a bit more robust. So I can say with some level of sanity that the risk management programs need to be a bit more robust. Yeah, it's still a bit more reactive, and one of the fundamental principles of risk management, it needs to be proactive and anticipatory. And not enough of the institutions, again in my humble opinion, is anticipatory enough in terms of what could happen and building processes or procedures around managing the risks that they don't know. And that's where the next level of risk management comes in, which is the risk assessment. So many institutions have it. They have some good people in it. But more needs to be done in terms of training and development for those employees.
What about the government? Does the government need a risk management plan, or particular government agencies and ministries?
Yes, and yes. Does it exist? No, no, and no. If you look at any state enterprise, any statutory body, there is not a risk committee. There's no one in charge of or in developing or implementing or rolling out any risk management frameworks. Should it be there? Yes. At the state entities, then all the way up to, I would say, at the ministerial level. The government is the biggest employer, has the largest amounts of assets. Therefore, they're taking the biggest risk, yeah? How are you managing those risks? Who is managing those risks? So I'm a big advocate of having an umbrella risk management framework that ought to be across the government. There are some governments now that are doing that. Canada, for example, it's starting at the province level, which is similar to our local councils here. Mm-hmm. But they have operational risk management frameworks in place, and at some point in time, it's going to reach at the state or the central government level. And I think we need to emulate those things. Is it done now? No. Should it be done? 10 times, yes. It ought to be there.
As a business owner, I'm not the government, I'm a small business owner, and I want to develop a risk management plan. Where do I start? Training,
and training. But let's step back a second. So if you are an owner, and this goes to the earlier question, either the question about the government and the question about what companies need to do. If what I call decision makers aren't as educated in the risk management space as the employees, because oftentimes the folks who attend my workshops are employees. There might be a CFO or a CEO, but they still report into either a board or a CEO. Those individuals need to be trained, maybe not as much, but they ought to be knowledgeable in some of the principles around risk management. Yeah? Because what invariably happens is that these guys come to the workshop and they say, you know what, we need this. But they go back to try and sell that. And then the folks who may not know what these things they're trying to sell is, oftentimes they get shut down. Yeah? So to the question about a business owner, I would always advocate educating yourself or attending a workshop or getting someone inside that can say to you or answer the questions that you're asking now, saying, okay, this is what risk management is. This is why you need this. And then start rolling it out to the employees. The old adage, the tone of the top, is very, very, very much apropos and applicable when it comes to risk management. So start with the education of the leaders, then have the employees trained on exactly what risk management is. That enhances the risk culture of the organization. Yeah, so then everybody has this group thinking about risk because it's everybody's responsibility. And then you start the hands-on implementation of the risk management framework, which involves actually assessing risk. which means going into departments, going into all of the functional areas to identify that which may be going wrong. Yeah? So it starts with training. It starts with education. And then that cascades, and it weaves and it weaves its way throughout the enterprise until it reaches a space where everybody is thinking along the same lines, and that's what you want. And out of that comes risk-intelligent employees, and that's what you should be aiming for. Any organization, or most organizations, the nirvana for risk management is where you have risk-intelligent employees. Yeah, it increases productivity, it increases efficiency levels. People work smarter because now they know what can go wrong, so you have less hiccups in terms of your day-to-day processes.
So I guess that also explains the people element of managing risk.
Big time, big time. So whenever I'm doing workshops, I ask the question. I've asked it of CFOs. I've had a few CEOs, and I say, what is most important in managing risk? Is it the people or is it the process? So the answer is the people. I call processes is the robotics of anything, because you could train someone to do or follow a procedure. But if that individual is not risk intelligent, let's stay with the risk management theme, then you're shooting yourself in the foot. Yeah. So when I speak about people, you and I can look at an event and come away with different risks, because we bring our biases into our workspace. For a matter of fact, it matters not what our occupation is. Whatever our bias is, that it goes with us. So I remember speaking to a senior police officer, and I said, imagine you have 4 police officers going on a beat, and they're each interpreting risk differently. Yeah, they each bring in their own biases with them, and with their bias comes their educational background, their ethnicity, their training at home, their religion. All those things, sits on your shoulder, and you take that with you, and all of those things play a part in how we see risk, and then in identifying elements to mitigate those risks. So all those things play a part. So when I speak of the human element or the psychology of risks, that's critical to the training aspect or in building a proper risk culture. Because if you know that these biases exist, and they do, we all bring it with us, then part of the training is learning how to treat with that. And just knowing it exists and acknowledging it exists is half the battle. So that is a critical element in ensuring that you have risk-intelligent employees, that the risk culture is optimal, and that your risk management framework is fully effective. So the people element or the psychology of risk around that people element is critical, super critical, to ensuring you're having a proper risk management environment.
The global financial crisis.
Yep. I know you're going to go there. Yeah.
Is it a lack of risk management that led to that?
Yes and no. So, by way of a definition, operational risk management is defined as potential failures around people, systems, or processes. In the last financial Armageddon, I call it, every one of these things failed. The people failed, the systems failed, the processes failed. And then there was an element of greed. So risk management, in effect, did fail. Yeah? But it was not because it wasn't robust enough. The guys who, Lehman Brothers, where the Armageddon started, the folks there knew how to beat the system. As a matter of fact, the risk manager was saying to them, we ought not to be doing this. The guy at the top said, no, we will still do this. So JP Morgan most recently, same issues. They spend what? Close to $20, $30 million a year on their risk management framework, yet they still fouled up. Not strong enough risk management. So risk isn't static. It matters not the size of the organization. Risk morphs, it moves into different areas, it gets bigger, it gets smaller. So it's not static. So you always have to be on top of your game, yes? So to the question again, yes, risk management did fail. And so us as risk practitioners are always second guessing ourselves now. Hence the reason for this standard definition of risk. Yeah, that came about, one of the reasons that came about is because of the failures of 2008, 2007 going into 2008. So, and risk management is better for that now. This guy, Nassim Taleb, who wrote The Black Swan, said that his most recent book is Anti-Fragility, and he said chaos is a beautiful thing. That when things go wrong, it teaches you to be better at the things that cause that thing to go wrong. Yeah? And a good example he gave was airplane crashes. That's why there's so few. The impact is massive, but so much is learned from it. I would like to think that financial crisis was such an instance, yeah? As maybe the blackout. Hopefully the folks are learning from that and it wouldn't happen again. I doubt it. But we will have to wait and see.
Is there a country that you think has risk management down pat that we can probably model after?
That's another great question. If I am to pick such a country, I'll say Australia, New Zealand, Canada, yeah? And again, I go back earlier on, I made the comment that they have rolled out risk management at the provincial levels, where many provinces within Canada have a risk management framework within that body, similar to our local government bodies, where it ought to be there, yeah? It's in the schools, big time, because many of the guys who, or the folks who would attend my workshops would ask, where can I get more of this, Mr. Hackshaw? Where can I go? And the only place they can go is externally. Not a sad comment for where we are in terms of managing our risk here. But those are the countries who are, in my opinion, at the forefront of the risk management practice moving forward. The US is there as well, but I would put those other entities, those other countries ahead of them for the way that it's being rolled out. Yeah, so their police service have a risk management department. Their defense force, the Army, Navy, I'm talking Canada and the US, have that. So I'm sure that, as I'm told, is a country likes to emulate. Those are some of the things we ought to be emulating. Yeah. So again, the countries I would look to, and that I personally have a lot of colleagues in the space, in the risk management space, is the Australias, the New Zealand, Canada. Great leaders in this field.
So where would you recommend, or what do you recommend should be Trinidad and Tobago's next step towards becoming risk intelligent?
Education and training. More needs to be done in that space. Not enough. And you know what? It pains me because I'm very passionate about this. Yeah. So there's I can't call it institution, but a program was developed for a particular institution. I worked with the institution to develop a postgrad diploma. It's yet to be rolled out. Why? So I'm a big advocate for starting it at, say, the secondary level, and moving it up. So oftentimes when I'm asked, at what point will we reach where some of our, like Canada is reached, and I say it's probably a generation away. Because we must start educating them. And so the thing is, we often chastise for our work ethic and our competitiveness. And I've said publicly, and it's in writing, that if we have better risk management, more effective risk management, if it's introduced more into our workplaces and our educational institutions, I think it will bode well for our work ethic, for our culture, yeah? We call it in the risk space the ABCs of risk, which is your attitude determines your behavior drives your culture. So if it is that these things are embedded and becomes part of our psyche, talking about the psychology of risks, I think our work ethic will improve. I think our productivity as a nation will improve. And I think there'll be greater efficiencies that oftentimes leads to greater profitability, because that's what business is there to make a profit. So there's work to be done, and I hope the powers that be heeds the call to do more. One of the speaking points coming out of risk practitioners is that you cannot just be a risk manager, you also have to be a sales manager. Because there are many folks who bandy about the term risk management who knows very little about it, or does not know how to deploy a risk management framework. So that's where folks like myself come in. But it's a tough sell. If you are not a risk intelligent individual, or you don't know much about it, it's a pretty tough sell trying to educate or convince someone why this is important. But there's numerous examples around this. Every day there's some sort of business failure externally. And I've said that which happens to our next door neighbor will eventually find its way here. So that's happening. The things that are happening in the US or in Canada, of the Caribbean, it's not that far away from our shores. Yeah, and risk is not static. It's not. It morphs, it travels. So unless we get all our ducks lined up and do more in this space, I think bad things will continue to happen. It's the Murphy's Law thing and its cousins. It's lurking, it's lurking, it's lurking, it's lurking, and it's only a matter of time.
So we need to get on board with the education and training.
Big time, big time. Because that's where it starts. That's where it starts. Education and training at the secondary into the tertiary and all the other institutions that are around. You know, bring in some experts, develop the programs, make it available because folks want it. Folks want it. Folks want it. So you either go online, pay very expensive, or you have to travel outside to get more training. So kudos to the folks like Lockjack, where I do some work with workshops, and I don't think there are any other institution that I'm aware of locally that offers that type of training. But at the tertiary level, that more needs to be done there in my humble opinion.
I think YouTube and Google was built for small businesses because most of our applications are free. So it doesn't cost anything to us to upload your content.
The beautiful thing about digital is that it's highly measurable. So you can now start presenting your measurable results, and you can now build a business case now to evolve your solution and take it to the next level.